Hi guys, this is Dancing Bear here with yet another video that I hope from the viewer's perspective will be exciting, great and informative as ever. Now, usually at the weekends I'm usually out, but today I am home, so I thought I would capitalise upon this opportunity and bring my loyal subscribers another video. Now, to my surprise, as I look down onto the very few videos that I've uploaded so far, I've actually not got any Doctor Who content, so I thought I'd get down to business, talk shop, and talk about one of the various shows I am extremely passionate about. Now, in terms of Doctor Who content, which this video will be full of, obviously, I always like to break down the show because it's got such a invigorated history. It's so rich with various levels of history. I thought I would break it down to eras. Now, normally people in their minds presumably would break it down to eras of which actor / actress were playing the Doctor at that said time. However, that being said, I always like to break it down in my personal mind of eras of who happened to be head writer who of that time, because it generalises upon that said era and what particular direction that show was going. Today I will be talking about the Russel T Davies era, and for those who are quite unfamiliar with that said era, Russel T Davies brought back the show in Doctor Who from 2005, and he was head writer until 2010. The two Doctors that was under his era, the selected actors that he personally picked, was Christopher Eccleston and David Tennant. Now, I will give people a heads up. I have slightly covered what I'm about to talk about in my Facebook live feeds, but I felt I didn't do it justice. So, prior to this era, before Doctor Who came back on television on the BBC in 2005, Doctor Who had a wide gap from its cancellation from 1989 to its brief return in 1996, from whence Paul McGann played the role as the Doctor. But apart from that, Doctor Who was roughly off our screens for about 16 years. However, that being said, Doctor Who always survived. There was always talk of Doctor Who coming back. Its most loyal fans wanted to come back, and within good reason. So by the time Doctor Who had returned in 2005, television had changed so dramatically. The reasoning behind its cancellation in the first place, when Sylvester McCoy was playing the Doctor, was, to harshly put it, and to be quite frank with my potential audience, Doctor Who was technologically behind from its competitors, from its other television competitors, for the best way to describe. And what I mean by that is, when Doctor Who got cancelled, all the other shows was developing, especially in terms of science fiction. The effects was developing. Special effects were getting more and more believable. And of course, just before the dawn of the 90s, CGI was just about to come strongly into effect. However, that being said, it was quite obvious that the BBC would never be able to find the appropriate money to fund a believable science fiction show at that time. And it has been strongly debated whether the BBC even wanted to. At that particular moment in time, the BBC felt more invested in their time in producing quality content in terms of drama. So this at that time, it appeared to be a silly science fiction show that no one really wanted to invest that much into. The ratings were at all-time low, unfortunately for Sylvester McCoy's demise, which is, believe it or not, just happens to be one of my favourite Doctors anyway. We'll get to that at a later time. But getting sidetracked to myself, Doctor Who was going under all-time new lows. To be quite frank, it was pretty much on its arse. No one wanted to invest in it anymore, so understandably it got cancelled. Under the pretense or the belief that Doctor Who was due to return in a handful of years. Suffice to say, that never happened. So, by the time Russel T Davies pitched the idea of Doctor Who's return, and let it be said that Russel T Davies wanted Doctor Who to return since 2000, so he was pitching the concept of Doctor Who returning for 5 years before it actually appeared again on television. I felt Russel T Davies did a brilliant job in terms of having to maintain a balance between keeping the old audience happy that remembers Doctor Who, but also making it inviting to a fresh, new and engaging audience. And and adding up to what I just previously stated, obviously making Doctor Who still relevant to its then said fresh new audience, because like I previously stated, television had moved on so dramatically. There was so much variety in television as opposed to when Doctor Who originally got cancelled. Now, in terms of talking about the Russel T Davies approach, there has been a lot of people stating that people found what is loosely called kitchen sink drama, but suffice to say, what that basically means is that there was a lot more drama in terms of characterisation of the Doctor's companions, if not the Doctor himself. However, that being said, me personally, I have to disagree with them, because I felt that said it's a right in terms of the kitchen sink drama grounded the characters and made them feel more believable. One particular character in mind is Rose Tyler. Now, I remember specifically season 1, when Doctor Who first again came back to our screens, it explored Rose Tyler's family. That never happens. You just in terms of classic Who, you just got the Doctor and the companion. But I felt the companion, for one of the few flaws that classic Who has, is that it never truly fleshed out the characters in terms of the companions. However, when Doctor Who came back in 2005, it did it in spades, to be quite frank with you. So basically, why I feel Russel T Davies is probably one of the better writers that Doctor Who could have had, is he also tackled social situations that was still relevant to even today's society. His writing credits has always tackled sexuality, and I felt that was needed, especially in that particular time. And it did so in, not necessarily, I've got to be careful what I say, not necessarily in a discreet way, but making the younger audience aware that sexuality does happen in different shapes and sizes. And he wrote that and gave subtle hints to the extent that it didn't have to be inappropriate. Now, I always enjoyed Russel T Davies' past writing experiences before Doctor Who, and I've enjoyed his writing for television afterwards. And I cannot fathom enough why I personally enjoyed Russel T Davies. For those who are curious about his past credentials, he wrote Queer as Folk, Cucumber and The Second Coming, which also just happens to have starred Christopher Eccleston. Also, I would also like to comment on the wardrobe, the wardrobe choice of Christopher Eccleston's Doctor. Now, he was the first person to play the Doctor since Doctor Who returned. I know that's probably obvious knowledge to anyone watching this, but just to clarify for the select few who might not have known that, I genuinely thought it was a brilliant choice to dress the Doctor as your typical everyday man, as opposed to the Doctor who had been in the past is this very original, but very sticking out like the thumb out of the fingers costume choice. That very inconspicuous is the word I'm looking for. The very inconspicuous costume choice as opposed to before. I thought just seeing the Doctor, just seeing him dressing up as your everyday man, there was a strong sense of believability, or it was for me anyway. And the fact that there was some challenge, could have been potential challenges with Christopher Eccleston's Doctor. One strong in mind that he decided to leave after one season could have developed problems for the show because it had only recently come back. I felt like David Tennant's, the choice of David Tennant's return. The choice of David Tennant coming on Doctor Who straight after Christopher Eccleston was brilliant. I can't stress how David Tennant, how brilliant he is. He is arguably the face of Doctor Who, as opposed to, in comparison to Tom Baker, is the face of Classic Who, because he was that widely enjoyed, he was that widely celebrated, and people know David Tennant. When people talk about Doctor Who, even to your average person who's walking down the street, who might not necessarily be the avid fan like I am, I genuinely, 90% of the time that people approach me in terms of Doctor Who, they always, quite frankly, mention David Tennant. Now, someone asked me quite recently, and they wanted me to talk why the show had been cancelled previously, even though I've briefly covered that. Basically, why Doctor Who got cancelled. back in 1989 was, again, because of its low ratings, because of its low quality in terms of special effects. And I felt at the time, even though I wasn't there, that doesn't make sense, a bit of a contradiction, I do apologise. I felt, looking back at the time, that there was a lot of people wanted to invest more in drama, because, to be quite frank, even though I've already covered this 3 minutes ago, I will stress it again. People wanted believable shows, science fiction, especially in terms of the BBC, not necessarily in America because it just become more widespread, but for some reason here I felt science fiction was quite of a taboo subject to talk about of television. People, especially in the BBC, didn't want science fiction. Obviously, with the popularity of soaps, even more so than as it is today, such as Coronation Street, EastEnders, people, the audience here seems more invested in television of that extendency. Now, I apologise again if people feel watching this feel as though I've been rambling. Like I said, I am practising, and I hope in the near future I do get significantly better. Hope you've enjoyed this particular video. Hope you've enjoyed me talking about Doctor Who, and as ever, hope you have a good week. Be safe. Peace out, and Dancing Bear out.